and welcome to the DM's Book Club, a podcast where we read about some Dungeons and Dragons and discuss how we might include it in our role-playing campaigns. With me, again, back from last week, talking about annual and how this doesn't exist anywhere else, is Matt. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. Good. Thank you for having me back. It's really good.
No worries. Well, we were just talking just off camera then how you are still doing work even when you're in virtual pub sessions, which
Yes.
it's commendable, but I understand because, again, working on different time zones and stuff is pretty impressive.
It is. It's also, it surprises people. So everyone assumes that you work at the Wizards of the Coast headquarters, which are in Renton, kind of just outside Seattle. Mm-hmm. So they all, when they set a meeting, they always set a meeting that's kind of at that time. I frequently have a meeting pop up at like 9 p.m. on a Friday night in my calendar, and I have to go back and go like, thing is, like, I'm kind of not working at that point, so can we move that somewhere else? Yeah.
On a Friday, I feel like my rule is like, just don't have any meetings at all on a Friday because you're already zoned out. It should be the beginning of the week, like get them out the way and then stuff. Oh,
my wife does a very high-flying marketing job for an amazing company called Boston Consulting Group. It's very big stuff. Mm-hmm. And her last thing every Friday is a really important meeting. And I'm just like, why? Why would they do that? And I think it's based on America. It's that crossover time of someone in America can do it, 9 a.m. for them on a Friday. And so everyone in the UK is kind of like, we have this big meeting.
But then for us, and presumably in America as well, you have the big weekend. So like you decide on actions and then nothing gets done for 2 days. That's the thing for me. Like I certainly when I set out my actions of meetings and I'll send them and email them afterwards. Now, of course, they won't get done the next day, but at least if they're within the week, then I hope for some response before the weekend. But the weekend, it's gone. I assume it's their own time. So big takeaway from this episode: no Friday meetings. Done. Right. Shall I tell you what we're talking about today? What topic?
Yes, please do. Yeah.
Okay. Now, Matt, you set the tone very high with like a proper annual and stuff like that. And I was like, all right, I need to think of something also equally good. And one thing that I've always had on my list of things to check out, in terms of supplements, is One Grung Above. And again, it was just sort of there for perfect. It's 5 pages. It came out 2017. Something for extra life, which we talked about in the last episode. Something for charity. Yep. So I was like, tick, tick, tick. This is going to have a lot for us to talk about. And then I read it. And as we sort of said, not much there, but I think from it, we can go into other things. And it's actually introduced me to an idea of like, what can you do if you have all your characters playing either the same race or playing similar characters going out to do either like a heist situation or working together where there's some degree of what I like to call like a paranoia, that RPG game where you're all in little positions and all sort of like have to do one thing, but there's all a little bit of admin that you have to do. There's always a leader who's incompetent, etc. So that's what I got from this. What experience do you have with One Grung Above, or what did you think of it to get sort of first impressions?
It's interesting because we had featured this in the magazine and we had talked about the subject matter, which was kind of reintroducing Grungs, who are these frog-like humanoids, into 5th edition. Mm-hmm. And we'd also talked about it because they then appear in Tomb of Annihilation, which is a very jungle set kind of adventure, and so they're perfect for that kind of thing, living in kind of tropical rainforest type stuff. Mm-hmm. So we talked a little bit about it like that, but I also had not actually read One Grung Above. And so, yes, when I got this, I was like, oh, okay. So this, I'll kind of give a brief overview of what it is, right? So
Please do, yeah.
It starts with an introduction from Chris Lindsay, who is one of the main architects working over at Dungeons & Dragons. He's a huge Grung fan, and so he wanted to reintroduce that. That's his introduction, right? So he introduced it. That's almost one of the most fun bits, because that gives you a little insight into how they work over there at Wizards of the Coast. Mm-hmm. And then what it actually introduces is characters who are going to be in a stream that appeared that was part of the launch event for Tomb of Annihilation, where all of the people who playing in that stream, all of whom are fairly well-known DMs, they all played Grung characters. Mm-hmm. And this introduces some of those, but it actually doesn't introduce all of them.
No.
Even all of them.
No.
Because what it does is it introduces the characters who then made it onto the stream that followed that, because a lot of people watched that and liked the idea of a game where everyone was a Grung, And so they made a new stream out of that, but it had fewer players in it. And that's what we get. And there's even, the last thing we get is a non-Grung character who is an albino dwarf. Now, in the first game for Tomb of Annihilation, they fight albino dwarfs. So I found that interesting as well. And that's it. And then the very last section is just some Grung traits. And it is telling you, that gives you the most solid kind of playable information. You know, tells you what languages they know, about their poison, about their water dependency, how they can use their frogs' legs to jump really fast, stuff like, you know, interesting stuff like that. But even that's not a huge amount. It's kind of the bare bones, really.
I was really surprised, actually, because they had been introduced but very briefly in Volo's Guide to Monsters, which I think just came out just before Tomb of Annihilation. And that had a bit more about the background and the sort of the culture and the sort of, you know, what Grungs are, which, again, we'll probably go into. But yeah, nothing on that at all. And so if you just read this as it was without watching the One Grung Above stream or looking at Volo's or anything like that, you'd be like, what are these characters? What is the thing? Like, just looking at the traits and stuff you get, like, I know alignment's not necessarily as important anymore. But reading at it, like, it talks about they're very lawful because Grungs are in this strict sort of caste system, which we'll probably, again, go into in a bit more detail. And that's the most about their culture you kind of get from that little thing about, like, oh, well, they tend to be in this sort of strict hierarchy where social advancement occurs very rarely. And so you can imagine, like, sort of a very, again, from the suppression of it, very oppressive, sort of like, well, you know your place, everyone works down from that. And then, like you said, it very much feels a bit like a bullywug in a sense, because obviously those are the other sort of main frog-type creatures that I'm aware of. I'm sure there are others. You've got amphibious, poison immunity. Everything's immune to poison, it turns out. I quite liked poisonous skin, so that's like your natural defense. Like if someone touches you, they have to make a DC 12 Constitution saving throw or become poisoned for a minute. And what I did like, there was like an update, I believe it was on D&D Beyond, was a note saying, yes, if you have to heal a Grung and you have to touch their skin, you have to make the saving throw. And I thought, brilliant, because clearly someone's gone, no, I don't have to do that if someone's playing a Grung. Because they had to make that note in somewhere saying that it's not AL Adventurers League legal or anything like that. It's just a bit of a playtest. It's just a bit of fun. But I like the fact they had to put the note up going, well, yeah, it's poisonous skin. If you need to touch the Grung to heal them, then you're going to have to make the saving throw. I just thought that was really awesome. And the other thing I just wanted to quickly mention was the water dependency as well. So this is, again, going back to sort of like other sort of not inherent traits, but sort of stuff that comes along from the ancestry of being Grung. If you fail to immerse yourself in water for at least 1 hour each day, you suffer a level of exhaustion, which I thought was really interesting. And then, it says you recover it through magic or by immersing yourself in water for at least an hour. So to me, it indicates like if you were playing a Grung adventurer, that is something that you'd have to work into sort of your nighttime ritual or something like that. You have to find somewhere which is enough you're about the same height as a halfling or a gnome. So you're 3 foot, 4 foot tall, and you have to cover yourself in water for at least an hour. So you have to just stand, I don't know, in the shower, or do you have to like get into a bath with your eyes? Like, again, just as a quick description of it, I was like, oh, this is actually, it seems quite fun as a result. So So in the way it's written, Grung lifestyle, so they grow from tadpoles, so they tend to live near a water source because that's obviously where they would have the tadpoles and protect them until they've absorbed their own tails and grow legs and climb out, is how it goes. And so if you're living near a water source, it's going to be quite easy to immerse yourself for an hour every day. If you're an adventurer, where do you find a water source in the middle of a dungeon? Where do you find a water source in the middle of a desert that you can immerse yourself in? Like, there are places it's going to be really difficult to adventure as a Grung, you know? Yeah, I genuinely don't know what you would do for that. Maybe you have to like use a lot of money and create some magical item, like what I would assume like a wetsuit that you have to wear or something like that. Yeah. Well, I guess you could. I mean, a bag of holding holds a certain amount of stuff. I guess you could get into the bag of holding and hold onto the side of it and keep your head up, because there's only so much air in there anyway. Oh my goodness. And do that. But yeah, it creates these kind of interesting dilemmas that you're going to have to get over. I mean, there are certain races that have sunlight sensitivity. So a drow, I believe, does, and a kobold does as well. And Duragar as well, yeah. You very rarely get a campaign where that is played out how it should really be played out, because it's a massive hindrance to that character, and it's the reason they normally live underground. You know, I mean, the Frost Maiden made a Kingdom Dark
a whole kingdom dark, pretty much. And so that's the first time the Durgar come above ground and go like, I think we might be able to live up here.
I think this is a great place. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but otherwise they would not, because they would shun sunlight. They just wouldn't do that. And this feels a bit like that, where it would be like, you would say to your DM, I really want to play a Grung. And the DM would be like, really?
You'd have to make sure, like, why are you playing it? And here's the world. We need to work, like, because obviously anyone can play with anything they want, and that's totally fun. But again, you have to work out, like, if you were going to play it exactly from the traits, like the poisonous skin thing is really cool, but the drawback of it, because of your ancestry, is that you have to make sure you are hydrated at all times, which is probably a good rule for all adventurers, to be fair.
But yeah, and the poison skin, as you mentioned before, so the cleric in the party is going to be casting healing word, because they're going to want to do it from distance. They're never going to touch you and give you that full heal that you really crave for sometimes, you know. The
other thing, again, so obviously we said amphibious, the standing leap, which you mentioned as well, they can jump up to sort of 25 feet. So that's your long jump is 25 feet. So you can really bound across sort of the combat area, but also 15 feet up with or without a running start. So like you could get up quite high if you were trying to get up some ledges or anything like that, up trees as well. That probably will help with your climbing speed. That's quite useful, certainly at like earlier levels when you can't necessarily fly, or there's difficult terrain or anything like that. I thought that was quite cool. But again, would make sense if you're like in a tropical jungle or you're in a forest of some sort where you can get to high places and see vantage points as well. Let's talk a bit about the stream then. So the Grunge stream. So you're talking about how Christopher Lindsay, loves Grunge, brilliant, and then put together the stream. Do you want to describe quickly what the basics of that first stream? You know more of it than I do. So
yeah, well, it's actually, this is the interesting thing as to why this doesn't appear as an adventure at the bottom of this thing. Like, I feel like people would buy this and then be like, is there like pages missing? Is there like, should there be more stuff? Because in that first session, they actually play through an adventure. It's very simple. They're just going down into a temple and they're looking for something specific. I believe they're looking for the body of a dwarf, because they need something from that. Grungs have a caste system, as you mentioned earlier, and they are a different color based on what level they are in the caste system. So a gold Grung is the sovereign of the tribe. They're the leader, basically. And so most of the time they're a warrior, because you tend to have to fight in order to get to be the leader. So they tend to be from the warrior side. And going down, so orange are the elite warriors. They have sort of a level of authority over lesser Grungs. Red are the scholars and the magic users. And green are the warriors, the hunters, and the laborers. So they're the lowest in the caste, the green ones. There's a really fun thing in the stream. So the stream brings together a number of DMs, as I said, who play. We have Mark Humes, who is brilliant. Find him at Sherlock Humes on Twitter. He's great.
He's brilliant.
Nodja articles there, Adam Coble, Matt Colville, Ruti Rutenberg, Satine Phoenix, and Lauren Urban, who's great. We love Lauren as well. And they all take different positions in this caste system. So one of the funnest things is that Matt Colville and Mark Humes, and I believe also Ruti Rutenberg as well, they are playing brothers in this thing. And they're actually like naughty kids who are like, they're like the people who are trying to, like, we have an objective, we need to go somewhere. And they're like, I want to do this kind of thing, and going off and doing something. Which is a really nice kind of thing to see. Oh, I won't spoil it, because there's a really cool bit. I definitely won't spoil it. It's worth watching just for them, because they're good. Because there's this caste system, Adam Coble, who is playing one of the other brothers, and because they're frogs, they keep talking about how Kermit is like their god, right? So, and Adam Coble's character is trying to bring down the caste system. So at one point he talks about how Kermit is the opiate of the masses.
Amazing.
It's so good. I want that on a t-shirt, seriously.
I think that's really such a great slogan. Absolutely.
But yeah, it's quite a simple adventure. They're literally doing a dungeon crawl. It's helped by the fact that Grung have these sticky kind of hands and stuff, and they just climb. The dwarves who built this temple put the traps on the ground, so the Grungle kind of just go across the ceiling and do that.
It's like easy in that sense. Yeah, and looking at the actual backgrounds as well. So, like you said, it takes some of the characters from that stream that are then going into the other stream. So you got Satine Phoenix's character as sort of the leader, so the elite warrior, who's playing like a monk type character. You then have Laura's character, who's sort of the sort of second in command. And then you have Ruti's character, and all of the, like you were saying, like all the brothers are like bleep, blap, blip, and all that sort of like great names for that. And what I do want to take away from this document, yes, we're sort of ragging on it because there's no adventure, and there's like, oh, what? But what I quite like about it is that it's very short backgrounds. This is the sort of stuff I love getting from players when it's just like, here are 2 paragraphs. Let's work with it. And they have relationships with the other 2 characters, and that's it. There's not like, oh, my tragic backstory where all my clan died, oh, my long lost love, like none of that.
I'm going to hold my hand up here. So someone once asked me for a character background, and I wrote 5,500 words.
Matt!
I know, I'm sorry. It was like a mini novella. It was insane. Okay.
But the thing is that I commend you for like writing the creative writing, but it's like, that's great. Do you want me to mark it, or do you want me to put it into the campaign? Like I have no problem with people writing like I've written so much about my own character and my other thing. Like I've written in my head and verbalized stuff, and then it's not happening game, and I'm like, but I know what happened. I like that. But something when it's like this, when it's like, okay, we're gonna do a stream, it's gonna be 8 episodes long. And what's great is that it has like who you are in this cast system. Here's your relationships. And the thing that stands out to me, which is very keen, is that Sassine's character is at the top as this sort of the monk courtier. As a Grung. And then you've got Laura's character, who's an outlander rogue, sort of in the second in command. And then you have Blip, who's also a rogue, but is a sort of more of a scout. And Satine's character does not talk to Rudy's character, only does it through Laura's character. Yeah. And I just love that dysfunctional, that feels so like the Office dynamic, like you're passing around that sort of thing. And I think that works really well. And then obviously you have the new character, the dwarven monk hermit, that comes in as well. And that just to balance it all out, otherwise you're just having this one-way relationship between them. But I just like that, because that's like, here's something dysfunctional, which isn't necessarily mean, but it's just something that you have to work around as a social thing. And I thought that was really good, and it was explained really well in these backgrounds, just like very simple, like here's the things just to keep in mind. And of course there's the thing, you can always break them later on. You accidentally say something, you go, damn, I shouldn't have said anything.
You will probably speak and they will look at you probably horrified, like, you spoke directly to me.
Yeah, they both go, we'll never mention this. It's like, and then run away. Again, you sort of mentioned it with the sort of different colours and stuff. There's the other 2 colours that I don't believe come up anywhere else other than Volo's, so please correct me if I'm wrong. There's also blue and purple.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. The blue ones are like the artisans and do, in quotation marks, domestic roles, which I'm not entirely sure what that means, but I assume it's like, they're the tailors, they're the artists and stuff. I'm going for all that. The purple ones, and I love this, it's just admin and commanders. So they're the ones that are behind the lines, giving out the things, giving orders.
Just middle management, basically.
I know. Because for me, I associate purple with like a royal colour. So again, just the way this, I like the fact that it's purple. You're like, yes, admin, good. Yeah. Like,
well, I liked your description of the way they talk to each other or don't talk to each other as being like an office environment. It literally made me think of The Office, where it would be like Dwight would say like, Pam, will you tell Jim that I'm I need him to do this thing? And Jim would say like, Pam, would you tell Dwight that I can hear what he's saying?
Yeah. Hey. The horrible back and forth, and Pam's like, fuck this, like, and walks away.
Let me bring in here another source.
Yes, please, yeah.
So, Monstrous Compendium number 5.
Number 5? It's like Mambo number 5, but okay.
Little bit of Grung is what you want. Had Grung in it. It was a Greyhawk supplement, and they were in there for that. Mm-hmm. There are some notable differences with today's Grung. Mm-hmm. And the first one that I really jumped out at me was the fact that the poison is different. So it says, the poison is highly toxic. Those who fail the saving throw die in 4 rounds.
Whoa.
I mean,
that's brutal.
No damage if the saving throw is successful. And you're like, what? No death or no damage is the options there, right?
I will say the older editions, I know they are much brutal, but that seems like really unfair.
Yeah, that's harsh. That is harsh, I will say. I'm assuming if you have poison kills you in 4 rounds, there's probably easy access to, here's how I stop poison at that point. Like the cleric probably has that as like a really minor ability.
Yeah, remove disease or something, or minor restoration.
But back in those days, so even drinking the water near a Grung village might affect you because their poison naturally seeps into the environment around them. And it could make you sick for 2d4 rounds, which affects how you attack and affects how people attack you. It's easy to attack you and it's harder for you to attack other people.
So it's almost like a lair action. I like that. Like, again, like if you accidentally stumble into a settlement of Grungs and you make a faux pas, because obviously they have a very strict rule system, you go through the swampy water or the sort of jungle river and you're like, oh, water gets into your boots or it gets into one of the cuts you've got. Oh, that'd be, I like that. Having almost like an area of effect would be quite cool on that.
Yeah. But there's a few more differences in the poison as well, even in the stuff that we have today for 5th edition. They appear again in Tomb of Annihilation because they're one of the creatures you may run across. In fact, there's a little mini adventure in Tomb of Annihilation that is set in a Grung village called Dungrunglung. Dungrunglung. Yeah.
Again, I'm glad you pronounced that and not me.
If you're reading about them in Tomb of Annihilation, it tells you that they have the ability to poison you. Their bodies give out poison. But that poison is just, the poison condition. That is, you get disadvantaged on attack rolls and ability checks, right? If you're reading about them in Volo's Guide to Monsters, there's a whole extra table based on what color they are. And that includes the colors you just talked about, the additional purple. And that is brilliant because you might end up doing star jumps.
Yes.
You may end up loudly shouting on your turn. You may end up being frightened of your allies. There's some really fun stuff in there. And that's all related to the cast of Grung that infected you. So that's a really nice way of kind of adding to that cast system.
Yeah, I really like this because it felt like, I guess, because again, with all these things, you don't have to necessarily go through the caste system, but it's just a nice way of, I think for this one, it doesn't have to be oppressive or anything like that. It could just be the way the society is run. But actually, I love the fact, like, for example, the purple poisoning is that you're just desperate to immerse yourself in water or mud. And you have to do that. And I just, again, in my head, because they're admin people, I'm like, they've done their work. This was a nice hot bath. Like it's nothing horrid of it, and you just go, I just need to, and then just face plant into mud. I would love that. And I love silly things like that. Like the red one, the red poisoning is just you have to eat food right then and there.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, I love that. All that sort of thing. I love stuff that's flavored, and it's not necessarily, it's all these things are unhelpful in combat, not going to lie, but these are just stuff that if you just so happen to do, if you just say, you handshake by accident, and then you're like, oh, I'm just going to shout really loudly. And it's just there's sort of almost social embarrassment of it. And again, it's that sort of thing where players, if they role play it or not, that's up to them. But I just thought it's just something so fun and so different. I just, really, really like that as well. Yeah.
You're sneaking through the dungeon and you brush up against your Grung compatriots because it's really tight in there. And suddenly you're shouting when there's guards down the end of the corridor, for no reason.
The blue one was quite funny because either you choose to make a loud noise or you do it at the beginning or end of your round. So you could be like really quiet and then like, like just as you're trying to desperately go through. The other thing I wanted to mention in the Volo's Guide, they have this churring or chittering attack they can do, which is so cool. Whereas essentially, I've not got it up in front of me, but they do it and then you have to make a saving throw or be stunned and mesmerized with them. I think it's a mesmerizing chittering or something like that, or cheering. Again, that idea that it's just a noise that they make. And again, I remember seeing briefly on that first stream, they have a stick. It's mentioned briefly, and it's a whistle stick, it's called, which is a musical instrument, but they use it to play above their heads, and each person has one, and they can indicate to each other where they are, what's happening, just through communicating like that. And I just thought that's a really cool, that's not using magic, that's not using like message or anything like that, it's just you doing that. And people, again, if they're working through the forest of it, if you've got a group of adventurers who are going through it and you hear these noises, you might not know what it is, but if you keep saying, it's following you, then you're like, oh, well, maybe they are signaling to each other that there's trespassers coming close to the community. So I really like that as a sort of little bit of a flavoursome.
Yeah, and it had an additional ability, if I remember rightly, where if they're rogues or they have that ability to, kind of hide speech within things, then actually they can use it to communicate more fully over long distances.
Exactly that. Yeah. No. Was there anything about this that you didn't particularly like at all, Matt? Is there anything you were like, I wish this was a little bit different, would you say?
Well, I think I really wanted an adventure in there. I really wanted, even just a basic, like, Grungs love temples, Grungs love, they live in, they live in this environment. Maybe somebody's threatening the tadpoles. Maybe maybe someone's trying to build something near your lovely tropical village, and you're like, no, that's not happening, and you have to kind of deal with that.
Even if it's just like a couple of story hooks, just to get people into it. Yeah, because I was thinking to myself, like, what other supplements have we seen that are similar to this or not? And you think like the Tortle package, that was like fully fledged, like you got your Tortles, you got your culture, and you had a whole temple that was just based on that island. I know a lot of that was like, well, this is another island that wasn't included in the Tomb of Annihilation, but it was only like 20 extra pages, and it was a quite cool supplement. And then I think, I'll get the pronunciation wrong, but it's the one with the fish people. Is it Lorcath's Rising?
Is it pronounced Locatar? I don't know how to pronounce that either. So,
neither of us are good at that. But again, that has the stats for it, but also very similar that all of you are playing as these fish humanoids that are going on an adventure. I think it's, again, like you said, like to defend their settlement or something like that. So those are like fully formed adventures, or a packet, as it were. And both of those were, I believe, extra life as well. So it seems a shame that there's not a little bit extra. And it's like, for me, I had definitely had to piece things together going, oh, so it's based from this stream.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the Tortle package, because that was a similar thing. It was extra life, and it introduced Tortles. Again, even though neither of these races is official in D&D, air quotes again, you can go to D&D Beyond and play them both. If you've got D&D non-core details, or whatever the setting is, they're in non-core. So you just put that on, and then you can choose to be a Tortle or a thing. There was a really good-natured kind of social media campaign that kind of showed you that Dungeons and Dragons is this broad church of, like, not everyone likes everything that's in Dungeons and Dragons, even the people who make it. So there was this quite fun campaign for Tortles about whether they make this thing or don't make this thing. And it was kind of like those who wanted Tortles to be a playable race against those who wrongly didn't. And that's right, wrongly didn't. Okay, I'm nailing my flag to the Tortle pole there. Okay? But in his introduction to this, which is one of the best bits of this, Chris Lindsay talks about how Grung weren't actually very popular with the D&D team. And when they were making Volo's Guide to Monsters, obviously everyone came with a big list of things that they wanted to do. And as you work through things, some of those will get knocked off just for publishing terms. You can't fit everything into a single book. But when stuff got knocked off, each person who was working on that book got a golden ticket to put one thing back in that they really wanted. And he chose Grung. And apparently there was a lot of eye rolling about that, like, oh, no. Just for him to kind of talk about that in this introduction is really interesting. It just kind of shows there's this kind of, there is this kind of slightly competitive nature of things in the background there. And not everyone being fully on board with everything. But, like, I like to think that him including Grung in that book showed people that there's often a lot more to a D&D, any D&D aspect than you think there is. Like, the fact that they have this caste system, the fact that their poisons, are interesting, the fact that maybe the highest class never speaks to the lowest class, they only do it through an intermediary. All of that stuff is great role play stuff. It's a good thing. So without them being in there, feels like it's missing. So
I absolutely think it's one of those things where I feel like, again, from us being from the sort of westernized sort of way we run things, we're not used to caste systems, whereas obviously in other parts of the world it's a real big thing. And I think it's a way to show, like, here's how you can do it without stereotyping it per se or making it evil. Like I know at the beginning I said, oh, you think it's oppressive, but actually you could make it into a campaign which is actually, it is just the way it's going to and how people go up. The only little tiny bit I was a bit like not so sure about it, there is mention in the Volo's guides that they are slavers.
Well, I think it's interesting that Volo's guide came out, we should have been having that conversation then, probably. But it came out at a point. Also, one of the annoying things about this stuff moving so slowly is that these things take 2 years to produce, right? So I'm talking to people about Candlekeep Mysteries now who started work on that 2 years ago, okay? So people are like, why can't you change faster? And you're like, but we're about to print a thing. And
I find it really fascinating because obviously everyone was like really gearing up. We've said this before in the podcast, gearing up for Tasha's, and it's going to change everything. And in my heart, I was like, it's not. It's going to be the first step, and it's going to be small. And people were like outraged. Like there's other podcasters saying like, can't wait to see this in 6th edition. And I was like, There's no need to be like that, because we all know, and this is the thing, I truly believe, like you said, it's a completely different working environment. We don't know what it's like working with us. You have more of an insight than I do.
It is. I can tell you now, people, the comment that I see over and over again is Wizards doesn't care underneath stuff like this. And I can tell you, I see the conversations in the background. They care. They really, really care. They don't want to be producing stuff that is toxic or has that kind of vibe to it. There's been a couple of missteps along the way, but we're starting on that path now, and we're on that path, and we're not getting off that path.
Going back to the slavers aspect of the Grungs, it's basically what it says is like they like enslaving things, but more for bossing people around.
Yeah, more because they did.
Yeah, the more because they're complete assholes. And that's the thing. I think it's that small Napoleon complex. That's the thing. And it's just about changing, for me, it's like changing the terminology and making it something like you said, it's like The Office, middle management, a little bit of power goes straight to their heads. And I just thought that was kind of important to mention. Like, it's like, it's not great terminology, but at the same time, you think, well, why is this? It's because everything is in this system. It says it's very hard to go up the ranks. And again, the other thing, which again, I was a bit like, not so sure about this, is like, oh, well, you can change your skin color, but it's very rare and stuff like that. And again, that might be a thing. But I think if you're having players playing this character, I think you need to have a real serious conversation. It's like, what do you want to play? Okay, you want to say you want to be an artisan. Okay, well, normally in this cast system, it's blue, but you're going to be a adventurer. Why is that? Because I think like changing the skin color isn't going to solve. I think that's the wrong way to look at it personally. And I that's for me, I would remove that line completely. I think like it's what you want to be doesn't have to match up to what it is in the caste system, but that might be a reason why you're not part of the settlement anymore. Or you could change the colors around to how you suit it. It's completely up to you. But I think the caste system itself, you can use this is a different kind of structure. You just need to do a little bit of research on it and play it appropriately, like not making fun of it or dipping down on it. I think it's an interesting one to sort of come up against, I think, because I was a bit like, there's some really cool ideas in here, but also not sure I would put this into my campaign. I'd change it. I'm glad I can do that on the ground level, but I know like going through like revised editions, all that of it, it's going to take time. So it was just an interesting thoughts I was having this morning.
Yeah, I think I have to say, I think there are elements of what was published in Volos that were to be remade today, a bit like Strahd Revamped. They tried to change some of the stuff. They didn't quite go far enough again in Strahd Revamped, but I think they would change elements of that, because 100%. I don't think they would want them having that kind of connotations that go along with that. It's interesting that back in the day, so again going back to Monstrous Compendium number 5, so they tended to be matriarchal apparently in that setting, which meant all the war chiefs were female. But my favorite line in that is that you rise through the ranks to war chief by duels to the death, with the victor getting the title. And I just thought, I like that you had to add that line in, because that's how duels to the death work. The dead one doesn't get to be the war chief because they're dead, right?
No, that's true. But they put in a great performance, so we should give them the vote.
One of the interesting things about the adventure is that you can, as adventurers in Tomb of Annihilation, you can go to this village, which is Dungrunglung, as we said earlier.
As we said.
There's a fun little thing that you can play there. Now, in Dragon Plus, just to talk about
plug
D&D magazine again.
Yeah, plug that, yeah.
Yeah, we actually featured some of this stuff. So if you go to issue 14 of Dragon Plus, we have Adam Lee's original notes and sketches for Dungrunglung. That's really fun to look at, because some of it's pretty close to what then comes out at the end of that. But actually, we have what One Grung Above doesn't have. So if you go to issue 15, where we talk more about Dungrunglung, we have the actual adventure as a PDF.
Oh, fantastic.
And you can play through that adventure from Tomb of Annihilation.
Brilliant.
So if you are loving the sound of Grung, which I am, I feel like I want to play one of these now.
I was going to say, I'm surprised that your one shot we did for Pantheon wasn't all Grungs, to be honest with you. That's so awesome. I will say, like, again, looking at the actual illustrations of them as well, it's so nice to see them certainly in Volos, beautiful different colors. Like there's yellow ones as well, which aren't mentioned at all. So again, you could add other colors in there, and obviously use like tree frogs. If you look at any zoo encyclopedia or have a Google, so there's so many different beautiful colors of one, and even those which have like patterned. Maybe you can even find a role in society for them as well. When Mira was on the podcast, we looked at dryads, and dryads have a very, very short thing in the monster manual, but nothing other than like, they're trapped spirits by eldritch beings. If they're so around, are they, part of their own little tribe or clan, or what was it? And at least here you have a structure you can start filling out with Grungs, and it's perfect for, like you said, the Chult sort of setting. So, there's so much to it. From 4 pages, where one of them was a title page, I feel like there's so much more we can uncover. So this is great.
There is also, they did the original short adventure, just a 90-minute watch for Tomb of Annihilation as part of that launch event. And then, as you say, they do then a campaign after that. So if you are interested in seeing people play Grungs, there's plenty of stuff out there. And that's a very easy Google as well.
Yes.
So in fact, if you Google One Grung Above, one of the first things that comes up is that the adventure that they play in Tomb of Annihilation.
I will admit, I only watched the first part of it because for me, there was too many players. I felt very overwhelmed.
Yeah, there's 7 players, and that's probably just a couple too many. I think 5 is probably a better number.
I think so, especially if you're all playing Grung, who are all, like you said, that you had the naughty Grung, and you had the people who are middle management. You have the office, but you can't manage them all. Oh, well, thank you so much, Matt, for talking to me about frogs and frog-like humanoids and toxic stuff. It's great, and I'm really glad that there is an adventure out there. I'm definitely going to look that up and put that up there from Dragon Plus magazine. Matt, is there anything you'd like to plug? Is there any upcoming projects, or what are you up to?
Please do go check out the latest issue of Dragon Plus. There's some great stuff in there. We always talk about the main releases, but we do it in a really informative way. So, for instance, you could probably read the feature about Candlekeep, where we've talked to every single one of the people who wrote an adventure in Candlekeep. And they tell us about themselves and about why they wrote what they wrote. Everything's a mystery in that thing. So they tell us about mysteries. One of my favorite things is we asked them all for their favorite fictional sleuth. And I was sort of terrified they would all choose Sherlock Holmes. They didn't. It's very, very varied. So I'm really happy about that. That's one of my favorite things.
That's awesome. I like that. Because then you can tell people's different tastes and stuff, and amazing.
I got to say, a lot of love for Benoit Blanc in Knives Out.
Oh, yeah. Classic. Yeah. I will admit, I've only seen clips of it. I've not seen the whole film yet, but it's on the watch list. Also, because Hitman 3's come out, and I know there's a whole level on it, so I'm going to have to get into it quickly. I'm going to play that. My name's Fiona. I run the What Am I Rolling podcast, which is a twice monthly RPG one-shot podcast. As always, going well. More things coming up. Like we've got a Labyrinth one-shot that hopefully I'll edit at some point. That took over 3 sessions to do, because it turns out Labyrinth is fun, but also it's a lot of talking, which is great. We've also got stuff like 39 Dark, which is like a sci-fi political thriller that we did with 2 people. All loads of stuff. And of course, you and I, Matt, we're going to be doing stuff on Pantheon. Again, we've got you and me, we've got John, we've got Mira, we've got Dee, all these DMs, amazing DMs coming together to run a game for each of us for a couple of levels in the same connected world that we've created together. And
I'm excited for people to be able to see the pre-games that we've done for that, where we were still kind of world building. I really enjoyed running mine. I think you guys had fun in that, but I've loved every one of those, and they've all been really different, really different takes on the same world.
You were the first to go, and you set the bar so high, and I hadn't even written my one at that point. I was like, oh no, panic. Definitely writing.
I feel like if you can let people play as a mimic and an owlbear and other stuff, then and they roll with it, then it's good fun.
There's slight spoilers there, but it was a lot of fun. As soon as I got that character sheet, I was like, done. That's me. I know the level with Matt. It's going to be great. Brilliant. Well, thank you so much for listening, everyone, and we will talk at something next time. Great. Good. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.